Thanks for coming to our talk today on accessible voice and text chat with PlayFab. My name is Evelyn Thomas. Oops, that was loud. And I oversee accessibility for the gaming organization. And with me today is my fabulous partner in crime.
I am Chris Palmer, right? This is working.
Yeah, it's working.
Oh, that's great. I'm Chris Palmer. I'm a program manager at Azure PlayFab. So
today, there are over 1 billion people in the world with some form of a disability. They have a wide range of limitations for vision, hearing, mobility, speech, and cognitive, but there are over 200 million people in the world of those potential 2 billion gamers that we're going to see in the next 3 years that will be deaf or hard of hearing. And there are over 50 million gamers in that 2 billion gamers in the next 3 years that will have difficulty speaking or will be nonverbal. So that is a very large number of gamers that want to be able to play that might not otherwise be able to because of the limitations that exist in a voice-only based system. So when we think about it, playing online brings a whole lot of fun and engagement to gaming, but if you don't have the ability to hear your fellow teammates planning strategy, you can't hear that somebody's coming over the hill and about to frag you, then you're not getting the best out of the gaming experience. And oftentimes, you'll just leave it. Also, additionally, a lot of gamers who are deaf or hard of hearing don't even play with a microphone. And if they don't play with a microphone or headset, oftentimes they just get kicked out of a game because other gamers know that they won't be able to talk with them. So today, we're going to talk about 2 main solutions that will help make that better for our gamers who are deaf or hard of hearing. The first is a service called speech to text. It's literally just that. People in the game that are talking, real time, will have their voice transcribed into text and sent back down to the gamer's console or PC that needs it. And the converse of that is text to speech. If you're nonverbal or you choose not to speak in the game, you have the ability to enter text-based input and have that converted into synthesized voice and piped into the audio channel with all the other people speaking in the game. So, 2 focus areas that we're going to talk about today are PlayFab Party Solution, it being a cross-platform multiplayer service that delivers accessible chat. And I'm going to be giving you some best practices and design guidelines for implementing the visuals that you need to make available in your game to complete this solution.
Sweet. Thank you, Evelyn. Some of you might be wondering, what is PlayFab? It is a fabulous thing for play. It's a new part of Microsoft. It was a startup that was acquired by Microsoft last year. And we're now part of the Microsoft and Azure family. We provide a variety of services specifically for game developers, cloud services. Those are cross-platform, they're identity agnostic, and they are all powered by Azure. We're going to focus today on 2 main areas, obviously, communication and multiplayer. Basically, we want to build healthy player communities, and we also want to build social experiences that are cross-platform and fun. I want to dig into that a little bit more. You might be wondering, what is dynamic and what are inclusive multiplayer gaming? What does that mean in a more tactical sense? So when we mean dynamic, we mean cross-platform, we mean auto-scaling, we mean service-driven, high performance. We don't want, game developers don't want to update their client to do everything. They don't want to have to deal with weekend scale and worried about whether or not they'll have enough servers or enough capacity. And we want all of those gameplay experiences to be able to reach all 2 billion potential gamers out there in the world who want to go have fun online. When we think about a great multiplayer experience, we think about a multiplayer activity loop that I'll work through pretty quickly. So first, you got people. They want to go do something with other people. They need a matchmake. So maybe they're meeting with friends, they're doing a quick invite, but maybe they want to go meet new people, and they want to have a quick and balanced matchmaking experience. We use the term balanced because you can potentially matchmake players in a second, but if it's not a good group of people, maybe they don't have the same skill sets, or maybe they have different communication preferences, it might not be a good game. So it's important to use a complex matchmaking system that allows you to build interesting groups and bring them together. Once you have a group of people, you want to connect them to an interesting gameplay experience. aka a multiplayer server, or if you're building a peer-hosted game, a party. So that's what we're going to talk about more today. And then once the players are out there talking or playing, you want them to be able to play for days, hopefully with maybe a water break or two. But the point is, we don't want users being kicked out for random technical reasons. We want them to be able to play until they don't want to play. And lastly, after they've had hopefully a great time, we want their activity to be meaningful, to affect other aspects of the game. And PlayFab has a lot of services that help you understand player activity and drive dynamic behavior, say in store or in engagement activities, like giving them notifications saying, hey, great job, etc. There are 4 key multiplayer services. You can find more about this at our booth. Statistics, matchmaking, party, and servers. The one we're going to talk about is party. We call it party because it's fun and it is a party. What is party? Parties connects user devices with an encrypted low latency network. You can imagine what we're doing is we're taking game data as well as player communication, and we're putting them into a secure tunnel through an Azure networking service. On the party network, there are endpoints that a game developer can create and bind to the network and then do datagram networking. There's a variety of datagram options, some that are UDP-like and some that are more TCP-like with reliability. All of it is encrypted and authenticated by the PlayFab system. And then you can also bind chat endpoints, and that's what you use for in-game voice and text chat. The service is incredibly easy to scale. It basically auto-scales on its own. It's a fully managed service. Like everything we build, we're thinking about players and player security at the center. So the service protects players against trivial network attacks like IP DDoS. So some networking and voice systems, they'll leak players' IP addresses, which allows an attacker to potentially send negative packets and potentially take down your home networking or find your location. So we use an Azure-hosted relay service to ensure that users are safe and they're not able to attack each other. The service is built to really simplify routing, so we handle routing between peers within the service. And lastly, as I mentioned already, it's an interoperable cross-platform service. We have a C++ SDK that provides really high performance on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, iOS, and Android. And one of the key elements that differentiates our communication aspect of this service is our integration with Azure Speech Services to perform transcription and speech synthesis. So when users speak, they get subtitles, speech to text. And when users potentially type text or they press a quick chat button, as Evelyn will dig into, that can be emitted as a synthesized voice. I'm going to show just a couple of technical flows for how to actually use the service, which is available in a preview. You can actually go download the SDK next Monday. So the basics are, step 1, you log in a player to party. When I say log in to PlayFab, PlayFab is not a consumer-facing system. It's effectively a white label developer product. And so it's logging in potentially with Steam or with Xbox Live or your own identity system, and then just creating a sort of a master title account so that we can keep track of the player and you can keep track of the player. Once a player is logged in, they create a network and they join the network. So that connects them to this broader party service. And then they're going to get a network descriptor. This is like an address for the party on the global internet. And they can share that network descriptor potentially through an invite system. So if you're using, say, like a Facebook invite or another social network invite system, say, come play with me, this is what you would potentially put in the body of that message. But you can also use PlayFab systems, like we have a matchmaking system, as well as systems for things like groups and serverless automation that can help perform this signaling activity. Once all the players have that network descriptor, they can join and they can do interesting things with each other. Once you've got users in a party, you might wonder, how do you actually turn on voice chat? Well, this is from the sample that will be published next week, and you can also see the demo. It's a little asteroids game, and this is the actual code that basically activates voice chat once people are in a party. It really just binds an audio device to the audio input and audio output for a local chat endpoint. So you create chat endpoints, you set the audio device, and basically everything starts flowing. What we're doing under the covers is we're binding to the audio device, we're Opus encoding it, and we're taking that Opus encoded voice content and we're putting it on the network for you. Another interesting point is that if you use the automatic settings, the system is smart enough to detect potentially, like you unplug a headset to look at the next preferred audio device and to respect any system settings you might have. Setting or activating transcription, so getting the subtitles, is just as trivial as having a player device request transcription. So they call this function, and the transcription will start coming out of the SDK. And this is how the transcription is handled. So there's a variety of state change notifications that are provided to the game developer, and they can get those through the system. And transcription is just another change notification. And so the minute users speak, that they will get a notification with a transcript. Another interesting point about this is that we have progressive transcripts. So as you can see in our demo later, as a user completes a phrase, like for example, my example is always elephant. So if a user is saying elephant, the transcription will report L, and then as the user completes the phrase, the transcription confidence will improve, and so you can have a fairly live, real-time experience of the user saying elephant. Text-to-speech is also fairly trivial. If you have text, you just pass it into the system, and all the remote players that are in the same chat relationship will hear the synthesized text. And there's a variety of synthetic voices that you can choose from. In fact, yes, we support 30 languages and locales for the transcription today. So when I say 30 languages and locales, it's roughly 12 natural languages, and then there's a lot of locales. For example, there's like English US and English UK. But 30 languages and locales, and then for the text-to-speech synthesis, it's even a longer list that provides a bit of diversity. For example, if you have multiple gamers who want potentially to speak English or French or German, that there's different voices so they can be distinguished in a group. And one of the things that we're working towards is, obviously this transcription speech synthesis, that what it does is we're trying to reduce barriers around accessibility, but we also know that there's abilities to use these technologies to improve other aspects that stop people from playing games with other people. For example, sometimes you might be imagining like someone wants to play a game that's very popular in a country that they're not from. So if I live in Seattle and I really want to play a game that's really popular in France, my French is not very good, with translation technologies that we're working on, you'll be able to have real-time translation, so I can potentially play that game and a remote user can be speaking French and I can see an English subtitle. What we're also working on is the ability to use these scenarios for moderation. So toxicity in voice chat is a problem that many game developers have had challenges addressing. And so by using transcription and feeding that into, say, a moderation model, like one of those like offered by Community Sift, they're a very popular product that offers good moderation models, you can use these kind of technologies to basically verify and understand user behavior and potentially address issues of toxicity. I'm going to quickly show an example of the translation tech. This is not available in the preview that you can try on Monday, but it will be available in June. And so it's part of our service that will be broadly available this summer. And it might be, we're going to see the volume.
It's important to speak clearly.
Sí, es importante hablar claramente.
Yo soy muy malo en eso.
I'm very bad at that.
So, oh, see, I'm doing the PowerPoint video, and what it's doing is skipping, which I don't like. So what you noticed there is a user was speaking English, and you heard and saw a Spanish subtitle. And I'm going to play it again. No, I'm not. Maybe.
It's important to speak clearly.
And you can also see the progressive transcript,
Es importante hablar claramente.
especially for
Yo soy muy malo en eso.
certain languages where the transcript sometimes reflects
¿Cuáles
an intent
armas son
or a
buenas en
phraseology.
este
So
juego?
I think especially in the Mandarin sample, you'll see how the
I don't know which
transcription
weapons are
accuracy
good in this game.
improves
The
as the user
rockets seem
completes their
powerful.
phrase.
别杀我！ 别杀我。
Don't kill me.
Okay, I will not shoot you.
好吧，我不会开枪的。
你是来自哪个国家的？
Which country are you from?
I only speak English and
I am
French,
from the United
Ah.
States.
so I'm not quite sure how good the Chinese transcription is, but I've heard it's pretty good.
Hey, this is a cute island.
This is a demonstration we've been working on with the Sea of Thieves team. And you can see
Lots
the
of
user
palm
is speaking
trees,
English and the transcript
lots
is in
of
French.
barrels,
And we
there's a
actually
rope,
think from doing user research,
there's a lantern in the
we've been
sand.
very lucky to
It's
benefit
surprising that it's still
in
on.
the accessibility program, but as well as these programs from partnering with Xbox Game Studios
Got some
and
nice
Xbox
water.
User Research.
Looks like there's a storm.
We found that users actually want generally text translation because they like to hear a user speaking in a different language, even if they might not understand it. But in any case, we have a variety of translation technologies coming this summer. So I think that's it for the service stuff. Again, this is all part of PlayFab Party. This is a great system for making more accessible chat sessions and just bringing people together for sweet multiplayer experiences. And Elvin's going to talk about how to make the user experience actually work end to end.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. So now we're going to dig deep into design. Some of you might have attended GA-Conf earlier this week, which is a game accessibility conference that we have on Monday in advance of this, and it focuses very specifically on game accessibility. Chris talked there as well. But we are going to go deep into design for the next 362 slides. No, I'm just kidding. Next 30 slides, we're going to talk about how to manifest the visuals in the game, make sure that you're building it the right way so that gamers can actually use the experience. So the first thing to think about is what's your implementation solution. So there's two options. You can actually provide the platform, you can leverage a platform level solution on Xbox One or Windows 10. It provides some benefits. It makes accessibility easier because we do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. The design decisions are already made, and we take into account all the necessary things related to accessibility. It also makes the UI design easier, but some of the limitations are that experience might not match your game UI, and we know that designers like to have an experience that's integrated and blended with the way the rest of the game looks. You also can build once and release across other platforms. Excuse the typo on the slide there. This is important because when you think about Xbox One and Windows 10, those platforms exist where we have a solution, but we don't have a solution on, say, Switch or Sony or Nintendo. And system overlay is not available on all platforms, which, again, we provide on Windows 10 and Xbox. So it's, again, an example of building that code once and reusing it. And system-provided text input box isn't available on all platforms as well. So let's think a little bit about what this is. An example of it in Forza. This is Horizon 4, I think. And this is our system level UI. This is the best practice and guidance we gave teams to integrate on our platforms. This is an example of a previous implementation in Sea of Thieves. And I will say that I'm sure several of you are noticing that the text is pretty darn small there. We don't even get it right all the time. We learn from our implementation, and we listen to the feedback from our customers. And Sea of Thieves is an example, heard very loud and clear from their gamers that they wanted the ability to have that text larger. So what they've done is implemented a setting within their game to actually allow the gamer to increase the size of the text all up across the entire game, including the transcription. So you can see it happening real time here in the video. This is very similar to the video that Chris was showing earlier. So let's talk a little bit about the first thing you should consider, which is settings. For speech to text, you want to make sure that you're offering a setting to turn on and off that capability. I will also say that if a platform supports it, listen for what that platform supports and leverage those system settings. Xbox One and Windows 10 have those settings automatically enabled, so you should listen and make sure if they are turned on, just automatically turn on these features within the game. The other is think about how the text is going to be rendered in the UI. Make sure that you're giving the user choice in terms of the font family, font size, font color, so that they can customize the UI. There may be a need for them to actually have a larger font size, a font that is more readable for someone who might have dyslexia, or font color. They might be colorblind and there might be a contrast issue. And then the other thing is think about background. Putting a mask behind it, background color, background opacity, makes it easier to read it against what's going on in the background. And then positioning. Consider where you're going to put that element in the UI. We're going to go into all of these in a few minutes. From a text-to-speech perspective, again, setting to be able to turn this on and off. Regional voice profiles, giving the user the option to pick a voice profile that best represents how they want to be represented in the game. So, speech to text, some considerations. You want to make sure that you're showing elements that relate to the player ID, being able to identify who that player is while they're being represented in the visual UI on the gamer screen. Think about the input source, about showing the user where that's coming from. Could be coming from voice, it could be coming from text, providing that information to them. The text string itself, the readability of that text string, and then again, the positioning. So when we think about the UI itself for the gamer identity, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can represent them through their gamer tag, real name. You can represent them through some form of iconography if you want to, but when you do iconography, try and have a different shape. Don't only use color as a way of differentiating, because for someone, as an example that might be colorblind, they might not be able to tell who each person is just based on color. So we recommend that you use something else that is more identifiable, personable. You know, this is an example of gamer pics on Xbox, but use anything that uniquely identifies that gamer. And then think about the input source. Tell them where that message is coming from. So it could be coming from text, and it could be coming from speech. So indicate that iconography as well. You also want to make sure that the text is readable. So think about the size of the text, like I mentioned in the Sea of Thieves. Also, think about how readable that text is. Don't use overly stylized fonts, because those are incredibly difficult to read, and very much so when they're moving in a real-time transcription scenario. Also think about the foreground and background. Make sure that you're showing a font color that can show well against the background of your game. Even something like this, you can see this is great, white on a black background, but your game is dynamic and it's going to change. So keep in mind that you should put some sort of mask, allow opacity behind it, and like I mentioned before, a setting that allows the gamer to be able to even make that a solid black mask, so it's much easier to read against the background. Also consider about the length of text. People are going to talk for a long time, and you do want to make sure that it doesn't scroll off the screen. It's very distracting to have a line of text running across the whole screen, so think about wrapping that text and keeping it in a quadrant and positioned area. And then also think about the distance between the elements. Leave enough room so it's easy for someone at a glance to see that one line is coming from one person and another line is coming from a second person, especially when these things roll by at a pretty rapid rate. Also, try and avoid using a wide variety of color options to differentiate who's talking. It is super, super distracting. And then, of course, account for scrolling. Stuff is going to roll by fast, so make sure that you have enough information on the screen, 5, 6 lines of text at any given time, so that the people that are viewing that can gain context from what's being spoken. Positioning is another consideration. We recommend this 8-quadrant with the 9th quadrant in the center is kind of a no-go. It's obviously that's where the primary action of your game is, so it's best not to put text there. Consider putting it in one of these quadrants that won't necessarily overlap a portion of your game. You know, you've got HUDs, you've got maps. Think about where you want to place it so that you're not covering important elements. And think about repositioning as well. It's okay to reposition it if the dynamics of your game changes and you've got some activity that's super important that's now happening in the upper right-hand quadrant, then move it to another position. Also consider elements that are not within your control from a system perspective. There may be things that will come up over the top of your game, like a keyboard of some kind. So consider making sure that you reposition that so it's not hidden behind a UI element. And Also allow the gamer to hide and show that information. They may not want to have it up all the time and really only care to have it up when there's some action going on that they really care about in the game. So some controller command, some keyboard command that allows them to easily, quickly hide and show that UI. A few other considerations, like I mentioned before, please respect the platform settings. Gamers set it once, they don't want to have to set it again within the game if they can avoid it. Consolidate your settings that are related to accessibility. It's becoming more common for games to offer a wide variety of accessibility settings, and this is a perfect example of a setting that should live within that space so that people know where to go to look for these type of experience options. And then remember the settings. If they set it once in your game, don't make them set it again. Don't make them have to, every time they instantiate your game, to have to go back and reset and turn this on. But allow the user to actually be able to flip it on and off. We heard recently that we have a platform level solution that's great, but it's on all the time. And this gamer wants the variety of choice to say, I only want it on in this game, but I don't want it on in that game. So having it in the game is a great thing for the user. All right, so let's talk a little bit about text-to-speech. Some considerations, keyboard. Simple thing, don't create your own keyboard. All I ask, don't do that. There's a lot of reasons why I know designers would like to do it. It matches stylistically with the game. You can make it interact with the system in a meaningful way. But where you can avoid it, try not to recreate the traditional virtual keyboard in your game, because there's a lot of accessibility settings that come along with those things to begin with, and it just makes it better for the gamer as a whole. Now, other forms of input, creative ways to show visualizations in your UI, sure, but general traditional keyboards, try and avoid recreating them. And you'll need to offer a text input box for those people that want to do text-to-speech. Not all platforms actually provide that. Windows 10 has a virtual keyboard, but there's no text input box that comes along with it, so you'll need to make sure that that's available within the game as well. And then, as Chris mentioned, and I mentioned a little while ago as well, make sure that you're offering to the user a wide variety of voice profiles that they can choose from. Listen to what the language settings are to provide them with the right set of voice profiles for that particular language. So, text input considerations. Similar to what we were talking about before with text output. You want to make sure that you have a UI that is actually visible for text input. You want to make good ideas to boundary that box so that it's more visible against a background. Provide an opacity behind it that can be turned black if need be. Like, don't make it a translucent color with white text on a really dynamic background. It's really impossible to read. And make it readable text. And then also consider, same scenario, move it out of the way when you have a virtual keyboard that comes up. Like, put it in a position that's actually usable. Also consider alternate forms of text entry. So a lot of you play console games, taking your thumbs off the thumbsticks sometimes equals death. So think about alternate methods of being able to provide input quickly using commands. In this case, if you want to do text input, you can provide quick phrases as opposed to actually having to write a whole long soliloquy of information, just zombies and boom, it sends it. Another option would be something like quick phrases that you can do with the D-pad or something along those lines, where a combination of button presses and D-pad up and down can cycle through a wide variety of different quick phrases that you want to communicate to somebody in the game. Think creatively. Think, be humorous about it. Think whatever works stylistically with your game. But there are lots of ways for people to engage with other people, like this type of quick phrase, emotes, those type of things that are nonverbal. And then if you want to get really robust, try actually putting some UI in there that allows the user to be able to put what they want to for a quick phrase. Let them enter the quick phrases that they think are relevant for their gameplay. And give them, like I said, quick controls to be able to get to those quick phrases on a controller, on a keyboard, commands, and surface those in your game so it's easy for the gamer to actually find them and know how to engage with them. All right, a couple of last minute considerations. Make it automatic. When you make things automatic and you make them simple, it's easier for people to develop that muscle memory, and then they start using it pretty regularly. And consider ways to trigger those responses and how they can be met to make them more conversational. And then provide a large collection of reply options, reply options, because you don't want somebody to just keep saying the same thing over and over. Nobody says the same word over and over again when they're in a conversation. It is conversational, so give them choice. And then also keep your replies focused and concentrated. For cognitive load purposes, people are watching a game, playing a game, they're interacting. They do want to be able to read that text, but they also want it to be quick so that they can look at it, grok it, and get back to gameplay. Also consider your audience. So we've talked about gamers who are deaf or hard of hearing, or who are nonverbal or choose not to speak in the game. But there are a wide variety of other gamers out there that still want to be able to play your game. So consider solutions for all gamers when you're actually building your titles. As an example, wow, we have too many transitions in this. Like we said, speech to text, robust closed caption options for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, text to speech and quick phrases, and non-text-based engagements like emotes for people who are nonverbal. And then controller button remapping for people who have limited mobility or reduced game mechanics for complexity, to reduce complexity for gameplay. Provide understandable game mechanics for people who might have, who might be neurodiverse and need an easy way to understand how to play the game, and alternate forms of communication to improve comprehension, like the speech-to-text piece that we offer. And then for people who are low vision or who are blind, consider narrating your UI to make sure that those individuals can actually get into the gameplay with other people, set up communication experiences. One of the biggest complaints that we hear about gamers who are blind, they can play the game very well because of really good sound design that's implemented by the title, but they can't navigate the menus because they're not narrated. So there are solutions out there that allow you as game developers to actually narrate out those elements in the UI and make it possible for gamers to hear what's going on. And also, there's a new Unity plugin that just got launched in the garage, I think, today, and it's responsive spatial audio for immersive gaming. It's actually a beaconing system that a game developer can use that you tag elements within your game, and this orates out elements within the game, making it easier for somebody who's blind or low vision to be able to understand contextually where they are in the game. So, we've talked a lot about design. We've talked a lot about the technical or the solution implementation. We at Microsoft firmly believe that it is important that our gamers of all abilities can play. It's part of our culture. It's baked into our DNA. And we want to make accessibility something that we hope others in the industry will subscribe to as well. We want to be accountable for the things that we do, and we want to hear from you if we're not, so that we can make the right choices. And we also want to invest. When we say invest, we're investing in consumer solutions, like straight-to-gamer solutions, but we're also, like these capabilities, investing in solutions for game developers, because we want to make sure we're lowering that development speed bump and making it easier for you to actually build accessible content, because the gamers are clamoring for it and they really want it. So a couple key takeaways. It's a cross-platform solution. We've got some design ideas. These decks will be available to you. And there are also some great resources on developer portals to give you information about good development and design. And also the available on playfab.com multiplayer for the details specific to the implementation of the PlayFab party. And lastly, come by the booth. Booth 4, it's a multiplayer booth. We have the Xbox Adaptive Controller setup, tap setup, and we have the speech-to-text, text-to-speech setup there. So you can come by, talk to Chris or Jason, ask them all the questions you want about how to integrate this into your game.